Why a man who loves you might ignore you. Ladies and gentlemen, life is a complicated dance, especially when it comes to matters of the heart. We all want to feel loved, seen, and heard by those we care about. But sometimes, even when a man loves you, it might feel as though he's pulling away or ignoring you. It's confusing, hurtful, and raises many questions. Why does this happen? Why would someone who truly loves you distance themselves? Sometimes a man might ignore you not because he no longer cares or loves you, but because he needs space to process his emotions. This isn't a reflection of his feelings for you, but rather an attempt to deal with the complexity of his inner world. For many men, especially those who are more reserved or introspective, processing emotions isn't as straightforward as it might seem. Instead of expressing their feelings openly or seeking validation from others, they often retreat inwardly to understand what they are truly feeling. This period of emotional introspection is often necessary for clarity and understanding, but it can be misinterpreted as neglect or disinterest. When a man is emotionally overwhelmed, he might feel like he is being pulled in several different directions. Whether it's due to relationship challenges, personal struggles, or even external factors like career pressures, the emotional load can become too heavy for him to manage all at once. Instead of sharing this burden immediately, he may take a step back. In these moments of withdrawal, he may not be rejecting you, but rather trying to regain a sense of equilibrium within himself. It's an attempt to gather his thoughts and understand his feelings before addressing them with you. For him, this space is crucial to avoid acting out of confusion or emotional turmoil. Processing emotions in isolation is something that many men are conditioned to do. From a young age, many are taught to man up, to suppress their feelings, and to avoid showing vulnerability. This societal expectation often leads men to deal with emotions quietly rather than openly. For some men, this form of emotional processing becomes a defense mechanism. It's not that they don't value or respect their partner, they just don't know how to navigate the storm inside them without withdrawing. When faced with intense feelings, the instinct is often to retreat, to figure things out on their own. While this behavior can feel isolating, it doesn't mean that love is absent. In fact, the very need for space often indicates a desire to protect the relationship. A man may fear that acting impulsively or expressing his emotions without fully understanding them could cause more harm than good. He doesn't want to say something hurtful or make a rash decision that could jeopardize what he cherishes most. So instead of risking emotional fallout, he chooses silence, hoping that by giving himself time to reflect, he can better articulate his thoughts and emotions when he's ready. This need for space is also tied to the way many men process conflict. When disagreements or emotional conversations arise, a man might feel the urge to step away to gather his thoughts. It's not a sign that he's avoiding the problem or the person he loves, but rather an attempt to address the situation rationally. Men who process their emotions internally often need that time to ensure they don't react impulsively or say something in the heat of the moment. This withdrawal is their way of ensuring that when they do engage, they do so in a way that is thoughtful and considerate. It's important to understand that when a man takes time to process his emotions, it's often because he values the relationship too much to risk saying or doing something that might hurt it. He needs this space to reflect on his feelings, understand his own needs, and think through what he wants from the relationship moving forward. If he's deeply invested in you, this pause might actually be a sign that he takes the relationship seriously and doesn't want to make hasty decisions based on temporary emotions. For some men, this space also allows them to work through insecurities or doubts they might have about the relationship. Even in a loving relationship, a man might struggle with questions about his worth or his ability to meet his partner's needs. These feelings can cause internal conflict, and without time to reflect and understand them, they might manifest as distance or silence. The emotional pause becomes necessary to process the doubt and come to terms with it, so that when he does return to you, he can do so with a clearer sense of self and a renewed sense of confidence in the relationship. However, while a man is processing his emotions in isolation, it's crucial that there is room for open communication. If he is withdrawing, it's essential that his partner understands that this is not a rejection or an indication of disinterest. Instead of feeling hurt or confused, The partner can offer understanding and patience, allowing him the space he needs without feeling abandoned. In these situations, gentle communication is key, encouraging him to share when he's ready, but also giving him the time and space to come to his own conclusions. By showing empathy and support during this process, you can strengthen the relationship and create an environment where both partners feel safe to explore their emotions without fear of judgment. It's also important to recognize that emotional processing can take different amounts of time for different people. While some men might need only a short period of reflection, others may need more extended time to truly understand and navigate their feelings. In either case, the withdrawal is not about avoiding the relationship, it's about taking the necessary steps to ensure that when he does re-engage, he does so in a more emotionally balanced way. In the end, if you find that a man who loves you is ignoring you because he needs space, try to recognize that this is a sign of his need for personal clarity. He's not distancing himself because of a lack of love, but because he needs to work through his emotions independently before he can share them with you. Understanding this dynamic is essential for creating a healthy, balanced relationship where both partners can process their emotions openly, at their own pace, with the support of each other. When a man who loves you appears to ignore you, it's easy to assume that something has changed or that his feelings have faded. However, one of the most significant reasons for this behavior is often rooted in his fear of vulnerability. For many men, especially those who have been conditioned to appear strong, stoic, and emotionally self-sufficient, opening up and expressing deep feelings can feel like an immense risk. This fear isn't just about being emotionally exposed to another person, it's about the fear of being judged, rejected, or misunderstood when they reveal their true selves. As a result, they might pull away or seem distant, even though their love for you remains genuine and unwavering. For many men, vulnerability is seen as a weakness, and this perception is often deeply ingrained. From a young age, many are taught, either directly or indirectly, that they must be the strong, silent type who can handle their problems without showing any signs of emotional struggle. Whether through cultural expectations, familial pressures, or past experiences, this message is consistently reinforced. In the world they navigate, vulnerability is not something they are encouraged to embrace. Instead, it's something to be avoided at all costs. As they grow older, this fear of vulnerability can manifest in relationships, especially when their emotions are intense and they feel the need to protect themselves from possible emotional harm. When a man is in love, he is by nature in a position of emotional exposure. Loving someone deeply means allowing yourself to care about them in ways that leave you open to hurt. The possibility of rejection, emotional pain, or disappointment can be overwhelming for some men. They might fear that by opening up to you, they are making themselves vulnerable in a way that could expose their deepest insecurities, weaknesses, or uncertainties. Instead of embracing this vulnerability, they retreat, believing that ignoring their partner or pulling away from the relationship is the safer option. This withdrawal is a defense mechanism, a way to protect themselves from the emotional risks of being completely open and exposed. This fear is not necessarily a reflection of their feelings for you. On the contrary, it is often a sign that they care deeply but are struggling with how to process the emotional complexities of love. Love, after all, is not just about the joy and excitement of being with someone, it's also about the vulnerability that comes with trusting someone enough to reveal your innermost thoughts, desires, and fears. For a man who has difficulty with vulnerability, this act of opening up can feel like a monumental task, one that he might not feel ready for or capable of undertaking. Rather than risk being vulnerable, he might withdraw, believing that emotional distance will keep him safe. The fear of vulnerability is often tied to a deep-seated fear of rejection. The idea of being rejected after opening up emotionally can be terrifying. Rejection in any form is painful, but when it comes from someone you love and trust, it can feel like a deep wound that might take a long time to heal. For many men, this fear of rejection is rooted in their past experiences. Perhaps they have been hurt in previous relationships, or they may have faced rejection from important people in their lives, like family members or friends. These past experiences can leave emotional scars that make it even harder to take the risk of being vulnerable again. The fear of repeating past pain can cause him to retreat into himself, convinced that the emotional safety he seeks can only be found in distance and detachment. This fear of vulnerability is not always easy to recognize, especially if a man is not open about his feelings. He might not express his fear directly, but his actions, such as withdrawing or seeming emotionally distant, speak volumes. The difficulty lies in the fact that he might not even fully understand why he is behaving this way. The urge to protect himself from emotional harm is often subconscious, and he might feel conflicted about his need to retreat and his desire to connect with you on a deeper level. In these moments, his actions might feel like a rejection, but they are, in fact, an attempt to protect himself from the fear of being hurt. Another aspect of this fear is the internal conflict that a man may experience when he loves someone but doesn't know how to express it in a way that feels safe. For some men, even small gestures of vulnerability, such as sharing their feelings, opening up about past experiences, or expressing emotional needs, can feel overwhelming. They might feel like they don't have the words or the tools to convey what they are experiencing. This lack of communication skills, paired with the fear of being misunderstood, can result in emotional withdrawal. The silence may not be because he no longer loves you. Instead, it's a sign of his struggle with expressing that love in a way that doesn't feel too risky. For many men, the act of being vulnerable and emotionally open takes time and gradual trust building. It's not something that can always happen overnight. In some cases, the fear of vulnerability may be so deeply ingrained that it takes a significant amount of time and reassurance for him to feel safe enough to express his emotions fully. It's important to recognize that vulnerability is a journey, and it requires patience and understanding. Life can be incredibly demanding, and sometimes a man who loves you may seem distant or unengaged because he is overwhelmed by the stressors around him. These external pressures, whether related to work, personal challenges, or other aspects of life, can have a profound effect on his ability to focus on the relationship or even show affection in the way he normally would. When life feels like it's too much to handle, the emotional energy required to nurture a relationship can feel like an added weight, even if he still deeply cares for you. In these moments, a man may retreat into himself, withdrawing to cope with the chaos around him. One of the key factors that contribute to this withdrawal is the feeling of being pulled in many different directions. For many men, their sense of self-worth and identity is closely tied to their ability to provide, succeed, and meet the expectations placed on them. When their career, family responsibilities, or personal goals begin to demand more of their attention, they may feel overwhelmed by the need to balance these competing pressures. If he feels like he's failing to meet expectations in one area of his life, it can result in a sense of frustration or self-doubt, leading him to retreat from everything, including the relationship. The desire to keep up appearances or maintain control over his life can lead him to prioritize everything else, neglecting his emotional connection in the process. A man who is facing overwhelming challenges may also find it difficult to ask for help or express his need for support. Many men are taught to be independent and self-reliant, which can lead to them internalizing their struggles rather than sharing them with others. This reluctance to express vulnerability or admit when they're struggling can make it harder for them to open up about what's going on in their lives. Instead of seeking comfort or reassurance from their partner, they may shut down emotionally, feeling as though they must carry the burden alone. In these situations, their silence isn't an indication of a lack of love, but rather an emotional response to feeling like they are drowning in the demands of daily life. Work stress is one of the most common external factors that can cause a man to withdraw. A demanding job, tight deadlines, or high expectations from employers can create immense pressure, leaving him mentally and physically drained by the end of the day. The constant rush to meet goals and stay ahead of the competition can take a toll on his mental health, leaving little room for emotional connection or intimacy. After a long, exhausting day, he might simply need time to recharge in solitude, which can sometimes be interpreted as ignoring his partner. But the truth is, he may be struggling to find the energy to give in other areas of his life. When the weight of work is heavy, personal relationships can unintentionally take a back seat. Family issues can also be a major source of stress. A man who loves you may find himself dealing with family obligations, health concerns, or conflict within his family unit. These issues can evoke a deep emotional response, especially if they involve close family members or require him to make tough decisions. The emotional energy required to manage these situations can drain him to the point where he has little left to give emotionally in his relationship. While he may still love you, his mind is preoccupied with concerns about his family's well-being, and he might withdraw from the relationship as a way to manage his emotional exhaustion. It's not that he no longer values you, but rather that his focus is divided and he's struggling to navigate the complexities of his responsibilities. Additionally, personal struggles such as financial instability, health issues, or the sense of being stuck in a rut can lead to feelings of inadequacy or frustration. These challenges can cause a man to question his own abilities and self-worth, leading him to retreat emotionally from those around him. Instead of communicating his stress or vulnerabilities, he may bottle up his feelings, believing that sharing them would only burden others, especially his partner. As a result, his need for solitude may be misinterpreted as a lack of affection or interest. The reality is that he may be so caught up in his own internal struggle that he finds it difficult to engage in the relationship in the way he would like. Emotional exhaustion is another common consequence of overwhelming life stress. When a man is emotionally drained from dealing with external pressures, he may not have the mental or emotional capacity to give in his relationship. The constant demands placed on him can lead to a depletion of emotional reserves, leaving him feeling mentally fatigued and unable to engage fully with his partner. This isn't a reflection of his love or commitment, but a result of feeling mentally overwhelmed. His withdrawal is an attempt to cope with exhaustion, and the space he seeks is often a way to protect himself from further emotional depletion. The tendency to withdraw in the face of life's stressors can also be linked to the desire to avoid conflict. A man who is already feeling overwhelmed may fear that engaging in difficult conversations or addressing relationship issues will only add to his emotional burden. Rather than confronting these concerns head-on, he may retreat in an effort to avoid exacerbating his stress. This avoidance isn't necessarily a lack of care. It's often a protective mechanism to shield himself from feeling even more overwhelmed. In these circumstances, it's important to understand that his withdrawal isn't an indication of a lack of love, but rather a sign that he is emotionally taxed by the weight of life's demands. Recognizing that a man's distance is often a response to external stress allows for empathy and patience within the relationship. Rather than taking his withdrawal personally, it can be helpful to offer understanding and support, allowing him the space he needs to process his emotions and recharge. Communication plays a key role in these situations. Gently encouraging him to open up about what he's going through can help him feel supported without pressuring him to reveal more than he's ready to share. Ultimately, when a man loves you but seems distant due to life stress, it's a sign that he is overwhelmed and struggling to cope. His love for you remains unchanged, but his emotional capacity is limited by the demands placed on him. Offering patience, empathy, and understanding during these times can help him navigate his challenges, allowing the relationship to grow stronger as both partners work through life's pressures together. A man who loves you may sometimes ignore you due to a deep-seated need for space and personal autonomy. This doesn't imply that he no longer cares about you or that he has lost interest in the relationship. Instead, it is often a reflection of his internal need for individual time and independence. Many men, even in loving relationships, struggle to find a healthy balance between their desire for closeness with a partner and their need for solitude. This desire for space is not a reflection of emotional detachment, but rather a necessary part of how he manages his emotions, thoughts, and overall well-being. The need for personal space can arise from various sources, particularly from the desire to maintain a sense of self. Relationships, especially romantic ones, are built on emotional connection, shared experiences, and intimacy. However, this closeness can sometimes feel overwhelming for some individuals, particularly those who place a high value on their independence. Being in a committed relationship often requires compromise, shared responsibilities, and continuous communication, all of which can be taxing for someone who needs moments of solitude to recharge and reflect. For such individuals, spending time alone isn't an indication of emotional withdrawal. It's simply a necessary act of self-preservation that helps them maintain their mental and emotional health. It's important to recognize that a man's need for space is often tied to his personal sense of identity. He may be someone who enjoys solitary activities, hobbies, or time alone to think, reflect, and reset. This time alone allows him to connect with his own thoughts, passions, and goals outside the relationship. When he seeks solitude, he may be trying to reconnect with his sense of individuality, separate from the roles he plays in the relationship. This can be particularly important for men who are naturally introspective or who derive a sense of fulfillment from pursuing personal interests. His desire for space doesn't mean he is distancing himself from you. Rather, it may be a way for him to maintain a sense of balance in his life and preserve the core of who he is. In relationships, there's often a natural tendency to merge with your partner, to become part of each other's daily routine and emotional world. While this can be wonderful for deepening the connection, it can also be stifling for someone who values their personal space. This need for time alone is often a way of asserting his individuality and ensuring that he doesn't lose sight of himself in the process of being in a relationship. In some cases, the more a partner demands attention, affection, or emotional engagement, the more the individual may feel suffocated or overwhelmed. This leads to the instinctual desire to pull away, not because of a lack of love, but because the emotional closeness feels like it's encroaching on his personal space. For many men, personal space is a crucial element of their emotional well-being. It helps them process their feelings, reset mentally, and come back to the relationship with a clearer mind and more energy. Without this space, they may become emotionally depleted, leading to frustration, burnout, and even resentment. It's important to understand that when a man pulls away or seems emotionally distant, he may not be consciously rejecting you or the relationship. Instead, he could be signaling that he needs time to gather his thoughts, focus on his personal goals, or simply enjoy moments of peace. This doesn't diminish his love for you, but rather underscores his need for emotional clarity and rejuvenation. This need for space can also be influenced by his past experiences and personality. Some men are naturally more introverted, finding social interactions and emotional engagements draining rather than energizing. For these men, periods of solitude are essential for their well-being. Conversely, extroverted men may crave more social interaction but still value time away to recharge when overwhelmed. The key difference is that introverts are more likely to seek solitude as a means of finding inner peace, while extroverts may pull back when social pressures become too great. Recognizing the type of personality your partner has and understanding how he recharges can offer insight into why he occasionally needs space. In relationships, these personality differences can sometimes cause misunderstandings if one partner is more comfortable with constant closeness while the other values independent time. A man's desire for space can also be a reflection of his desire for personal growth and self-improvement. Many men are highly focused on their individual goals, ambitions, and passions. Whether it's work, personal development, or hobbies, these pursuits often require uninterrupted time and focus. When a man is deeply involved in a project or passion, he might temporarily pull back from the relationship to concentrate on achieving his personal goals. This desire for space doesn't mean he doesn't care about you. It's often a way for him to maintain the balance between nurturing the relationship and pursuing his individual aspirations. The space he takes for his personal endeavors helps him grow as a person, which in turn can benefit the relationship by fostering a deeper understanding of who he is.